insight into what's going on. I've been doing research in Wikipedia since 2006, and for years I've been saying you have to monitor, you have to monitor. But this goes deeper than just monitoring and knowing what's going on with Wikipedia. The reason that Wikipedia is so important is because everyone's using it. It is one of the top, it's actually the 6th most popular website in the world. That's following Google and Yahoo and some of the big ones like that. But more importantly, when we're talking about companies, when you do a search in any of the search engines, the Wikipedia entry is one of the top entries that you receive. It's typically 3rd to 5th, so it's very easily accessible by the public. Then a recent study found 61% of journalists use it. Now they're not using it and citing it, but they are using it as a starting point. And then the most recent research shows that 53% of adult online Americans are using Wikipedia. I think that's a low number. I think 53% use it frequently. Probably more than 53% have used it at some point in time. So why is this an issue in public relations? We know it's a popular site. We know people are using it. Well, the problem comes when we look at a statement that Jimmy Wales made recently. And just to read this to you quickly, this is not complicated. There is a very simple, bright line rule that constitutes best practice. Do not edit Wikipedia directly if you are a paid advocate, aka a PR professional. Respect the community by interacting with us appropriately. Well, that's well and good. Jimmy Wales is the co-founder of Wikipedia. He is no longer involved in the day-to-day operations of Wikipedia. However, when Jimmy Wales speaks, people in the Wikipedia community listen. So he essentially sets their policies. Now, Wikipedia is an encyclopedia that anyone can edit, according to Wikipedia. Anyone but PR folks. That means if you have an entry, you cannot edit it, but your advocates can, your competitors can. Anyone in the general public, a 10-year-old kid, can go in and say whatever they want about your company, but you cannot correct it. Instead, what they have said is this is what they want us to do. Only PR folks are required to establish this transparent ID. Essentially, when you make an edit in Wikipedia, your IP address is captured unless you create an account. The Wikipedians, the true Wikipedia community, they don't use their real names. They don't truly disclose who they are. However, they are requiring PR professionals to do that. They want you to state who you are and where you work for. They consider it a conflict of interest to edit on behalf of your company. So you create the transparent ID, and instead of directly editing, what they want the profession to do is to go to the talk pages. So if you picture Wikipedia, you've got the main page that everyone reads, and then there's a tab up at the top that you click, and then you can type in and put in a request. Well, that's great. So you put in your request, and then, as I said, you hope and you wait and you sit and you wait and you hope that somebody makes the edit. Now, by somebody, there's a lot of people, especially for top companies, that are monitoring those pages. There are people that are passionate about what they do. Some of them consider it their full-time job. Some of them are retirees from companies. Some of them are kids that live in the community that just have some free time. The average age of the true Wikipedian is 23 with a college education. So they're usually a little bit younger. But in addition to this hope and wait, what the Wikipedia community has said is they would like to see PR professionals show that they know how to operate in the Wikipedia world by going out and becoming an editor on other pages. You can't edit your company's page, but what you can do is you can go out and edit, say you like running. You can edit the page on running, and you know certain trails. You can talk about certain trails and different things like that so that you can demonstrate to them that you understand their product. Excuse me, through these substantial edits. Okay, so even folks that play by the rules, I was wondering how all of this is working, right? So I did a survey. And this research survey is on the Social Media Research Center. And there's also an outline of some concerns that I have with the current policy that's available through the Institute for Public Relations. But now this survey, I conducted it last year in February. I surveyed PRSA, IABC, WOMA, IPR members. Some of y'all may have taken it. And hearing members got a pretty good response, just over, 1,284. When I asked how many people were familiar with the rule, only 21% were familiar with the rule. Now, I stated, are you familiar with the rule? I did not state exactly what the rule is. So I believe this number is probably skewed because people think, oh, Wikipedia is an encyclopedia anyone can enter, or anyone can edit. So they think they get it, but they really don't. So I also asked how many people felt they had factual errors on their page. And this is a number that the media picked up and went crazy with. Essentially, what I found is that 60% of respondents who had a Wikipedia page and were familiar with the Wikipedia page for their client or company stated there were factual errors. Especially in the UK, but quite a bit of the media like to say 60% of Wikipedia had errors. And I tried to correct some of those, but not everyone wanted to listen to the truth. But digging into this a little bit deeper, playing by the rules, making the request to do an edit doesn't really get us where we need to be. At least that's what the research is showing. When I asked how long it takes to have that process work, 40% said days, 12% said weeks, 24% never got a response. Now, Jay Walsh, the head of communications for Wikimedia, stated that that's too long. He agrees, that's too long. Never getting a response is too long. But they don't have a process to fix that because they're volunteers. You can't go out to the public and force them to do something sooner. So they've said, well, we agree that's too long, but we can't do anything. At least not the way the product currently works. So I also asked, is it time for a change? I think the system's broken. The process doesn't work by eliminating us as an option to make edits. But I asked the folks that have done edits and asked them what they think, and 74% said, yes, they think it's time for a change. And it's not surprising that they said that because 41% of respondents said that they believe the public uses Wikipedia more than their own website. So that's an alarming use of Wikipedia, I think. So, all right, so we've got an issue. What's been done for the issue? There's a group, we call it CREW. It's Corporate Representatives for Ethical Wikipedia Engagement. Kind of cute. It was started by Phil Gomes at Edelman. And really, there's a bunch of folks that are members of this group. Jimmy Wales, the co-founder of Wikipedia, used to be a member, although he denies it to this date in a variety of interviews. He says he has never been a member, but it's a public Facebook group, and you can see his comments. But essentially, this group is Wikipedians and public relations and communications professionals trying to come to terms with the issue and figure out how we can progress. So to date, the group has been open for a little over a year. The big progress of this group is a flowchart of how to make edits. It's a very detailed, not easy to work through, and once you get through the maze, the end point is, well, if you still don't have a result, if you still haven't gotten anywhere, sorry. Jimmy Wales has come back in an interview in early October. He said, all right, I'll improve that end line. You contact me, put a note on my talk page, and I'll take care of it personally. I don't know if that'll happen, but that is something that he has stated he would do. But you have to work through the whole process. And the whole process takes close to a month. So if you've got something you need to change, you can get to Jimmy after a month of the process. So in my opinion, and then we have the Chartered Institute for PR. The Chartered Institute for PR also worked with Wikipedians, the core group at Wikipedia, and came up with a list of guidelines. It's a beautiful document. It's available online. There's been a lot of publicity about it. But essentially the guidelines are, don't edit Wikipedia directly. There are some instances where they do state that you can make direct edits, Those instances are if there is an incorrect date or if there is an incorrect financial figure, you can correct those. But there's a stipulation out to the side of that stating, but we strongly suggest you do not do that. So you can, but you shouldn't, according to the Chartered Institute for PR guidelines. So in my opinion, there's really no success yet. We're working on it, we're trying, but Wikipedia has kind of dug in their heels. And they've said their policies are accurate. There's no need to change them. They work, they're adequate, they're fine. PR people are just going to go in and spin the entries of their companies, and they would rather have the accuracy that they currently have than articles touched by the PR profession. So, my opinion, I think we need to look towards those next steps. What are the next steps? I think we need to take a stand as a profession. I think waiting eternally or a month or weeks to get something that could potentially impact your company's reputation is not appropriate. I think that in addition to taking a position, I plan to reconduct the research that I did, kind of dig into some of the issues a little bit more. February, it will have been a year, so I want to see where the progress has been made or backslid. I've talked to a lot of folks that have said they've used the talk pages, they've clearly identified who they are, and they've said in paragraph 2, there's an incorrect date, would you please fix it? And the fix is, chop out paragraph 2. So there's some payback, I think, that maybe we are seeing because of some of the things that have happened, some of the press that's come out from my research. Jimmy Wales just made a statement in October that my research and the progress and attempts to kind of change things by the industry is a nuisance and to be completely ignored. So I think it's got some people that really need to pay attention to it, but we need to work with Wikipedia. We can't come out, I would love to go around and tell everyone, just make changes and they'll deal with it, because that won't work. Because the media loves to point out when people do something wrong. And Jimmy Wales loves the media. So he likes to come out and say that he questions companies' ethics for not following his rules. The rules also actually are not formally written in Wikipedia, which does make it a little bit more difficult. But in addition to this, that education component is necessary. I've been doing a lot of different presentations, talking to a lot of different folks to make sure that right now everyone knows, don't touch it. Don't go in, don't make edits, because it could be potentially a reputation-harming move. So I don't have a lot of time today, but I wanted to kind of give you the issue, talk about what's been done, where we're going, why I think it's so important.